Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with the Weather Deck profile for the Weather Painter Control deck. I'm just going to go through everything in here, and then I'll explain how it works. So for monsters, we've got 1 Lampla Weather Painter, we've got 3 Hecatrice, 3 Termor, 3 Bengala, 1 Sleet, 2 Lazula, 3 Seal, and 3 Herald of Greenlight. For our spells, we're playing 3 Pot of Duality, 3 Degenerate Circuit, 1 Rain Pattern, 1 Cloud Pattern, 3 Snow Pattern, and 3 Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. Our traps: 3 Storming Mirror Force, 2 Thunder Pattern, and 2 Call the Haunted. For extra deck, we've got 1 each of Baguska, Heartland Draco, Castell, Fairy Cheergirl, Acid Golem, Nightmare Shark, Break Sword, Grampulse, Leviair, Sky Cavalry, Borrelode Dragon, RCL, the Weather Painter of Rainbows, Decode Talker, Akashic Magician, and the new Security Dragon. Our side deck I'll go over in a little bit. So this is a fairly basic Weather Painter deck. If you're unfamiliar with the Weather Painters, all the monsters have the same effect at the end. Once per turn, during the standby phase of the next turn, after this card on the field was banished to activate its effect, you can special summon this banished card. Now on their own, none of the Weather Painter monsters have effects that let you banish them, but that's where the patterns come in. All their spell traps, patterns of the Weather Painters, they're all continuous spells and traps, and they all share this common effect, that you can only control one of it. And Weather Painter effect monsters that are in the main monster zone directly ahead of it, or to either side of it, gain the following effect. So it makes sort of like this T pattern, the one directly in front of it and the one to the left and right of it. All your monsters gain this monster effect. They're all quick effects that let you banish them during either player's turn to do something. So the idea is, just as an example, looking at the snow pattern of the Weather Painters, quick effect, you can banish this card, add 1 Weather Painter from your deck to your hand, but you cannot add other cards from your deck to your hand this turn, except by drawing them. So you play this, you play a Weather Painter in front of it, or to the left or the right of it, and then during either player's turn, that monster's effect is that you can banish it to add any Weather Painter. Then during the next standby phase, it special summons itself back onto the field in either position anywhere you want. So the idea is you slowly build up so that you have a whole bunch of these, and you have a whole bunch of the patterns on the field, and then each of these will have 2 or 3 effects that they can activate, and with the exception of the Snow Weather pattern that basically says you can only use it once per turn, because you can't add other cards the same turn you activate it, the rest of these you can use multiple times, so you get sort of this toolbox where you can use different things to stun your opponent out. The Cloudy Weather pattern, you can banish this card to target 1 face-up monster on the field. Its attack is halved, and also it can attack directly, which is both good defensively because you can lower your opponent's monster's attacks, but it's also good offensively because you can lower your own monster's attacks and then attack directly if you can't get over their things. If you do want to get over their things, that's where the Thunder pattern comes into play. It's at the start of the damage step. If this card battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that card and return your opponent's monster to the hand. So it lets you get rid of things, especially extra deck monsters. And we're playing a card in conjunction with that. I'll get to that in a moment. But our last Weather Pattern card we're playing is the Rain, and you can banish this card, target 1 spell trap your opponent controls, and return it to the hand, which has sort of niche effect. Same thing with this. That's why we're only playing it at 1. There's a lot of ways to search it, most notably just the Snowy Weather pattern. So use this in whatever case. If nothing else, during the end phase, you can send their traps back to their hand so that you can attack directly. Or if you're lucky, you get something like the Pendulum Magicians or Dark Magicians that have face-up spell traps. You can remove them after they activate them to make them waste their resources. Now there are 2 other pattern cards that we're not playing. One is the Sunny Weather pattern. This is, you can banish this card, target 1 monster you control, tribute it to special summon a Weather Painter from your hand or graveyard with a different name from that monster. This can be good, but only if you've already swarmed. I found it a little bit too bricky since you not only have to banish that monster, plus have another one, plus have one with a different name in the graveyard. But it can be good recovery if you do fight a deck that does have a lot of destruction or a lot of removal that you can't get around. Although this deck really does get around a lot of removal. If they target most of your monsters, you can banish them as quick effects with any of these other ones, and just take them off the field so they're not affected by it. And the other one is our other trap, that's the Aurora pattern, and this is when exactly 1 card is added to either player's hand. You can banish this card, banish that card, and if you do, that player draws 1 card. This can actually be a really effective card against certain decks, especially if they play a lot of one-ofs that they're searching. You can get that card out of their hand. Granted, they don't go minus because they get to draw a card, which is really why I didn't play it. I don't know what I'm going up against, but if you're in a more defined meta, I would definitely recommend putting this in, or if nothing else, play it in the side deck, and then trade it out if you find your opponent's doing a whole lot of searching. Likewise, you can use this on your own cards if you already have a full hand and you're searching stuff that you don't really need because you just get free searches every turn. You can always chain this to your own cards, and then instead of searching, draw a card and hope to draw into one of your other important cards. Speaking of which, probably the other most important card we have is Degenerate Circuit. The controller of this card must pay 500 life points during each of their standby phases. Monster cards that would be returned from the field to the hand are removed from play instead. This really gives the weather painters a lot of bite that they don't have otherwise. The thing about the Thunder weather pattern is once your opponent knows you have it, they can kind of play around it by not summoning extra deck monsters or not attacking into your monsters. This, though, makes it a lot more difficult because you actually remove their resources instead of sending it back to their hand. And of course, if you can swarm, you get this on the field, you have 3 monsters around it. Even your 0 attack monsters, you can activate this at the start of the damage step, and then just banish your opponent's monsters. Non-targeting banishment can actually be really effective. With that, we're also playing Storming Mirror Force, just when your opponent's monster declares its attack, return all attack position monsters they control to the hand, which again, combined with this, makes it Banishing Mirror Force, which can be absolutely devastating. If you don't want to play this, there's also Drowning Mirror Force. Oftentimes you'll tag all your monsters off the field, so this can actually be pretty good since it only works when your opponent declares a direct attack, but it shuffles all their cards into the deck. I considered playing this one, but I didn't really have enough room, and I figured if I was playing Degenerate Circuit, I should go ahead and do something that's synergistic. If you get rid of this, I would just go ahead and put the Drowning in instead of the Storming, because you're going to be defensive a lot more. The other really important card we have in here is Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. Just once per turn, you could special summon a fairy from your hand, as long as you control no monsters. You could search this by discarding Hecatrice, and it really is useful. All your monsters are fairies. You don't really have a lot of swarming potential, and this can really help you get monsters onto the field quickly, especially because your monsters tag out. So if you just have one, you can banish it to search, then special summon, then normal summon, and then during your opponent's turn, you've got 3 monsters on the field. All these continuous spell traps, including Call of the Haunted, which is just basic recovery if something gets in the graveyard, work really well with the Weather Painter of Thunder. In addition to the standard Weather Painter effect, you can send 1 continuous spell trap you control to the graveyard to place 1 Weather Painter spell trap from your deck in your spell trap zone face up. This combos really well if you've got Degenerate Circuit out or you've got extra copies of it and you don't want to pay the life point cost or you're not using it. You could send it to the graveyard to search any of your other weather patterns. If you just have one that you don't want, you can send it. If you have your Valhalla Lord of the Fallen, oftentimes what I'll do is use this to special summon a high level weathery or another weathery, normal summon this, and then trade out Valhalla for the card that searches. Then you can banish one to search and get any other Weather Painter card you want, most likely the Thunder pattern if you don't already have it. As for the other Weather Painter effects, Seal's probably the best card you have, just because when it's normal summoned, you can place 1 Weather Painter spell trap from your deck in your spell trap zone face up. So it searches anything. It's got 0 defense, but again, that doesn't really matter because you can always get your Snowy Weather pattern that you immediately tag this out to search whatever else you want in the deck, and then you can bring it back in defense mode during the standby phase and it has 2200 defense. And again, that same combo. You can normal summon this, put this in here, and then if you've got Valhalla, you could special summon and actually get a pretty decent field going first turn if you get the right hand. In order to help you get that right hand, that's why we're playing Pot of Duality, pretty obvious staple card, excavate the top 3, add 1, shuffle the rest back into the deck, and you can't special summon the turn you use this. This is really just for first turn, trying to get things going. In order to start out with a solid hand, you really either need Seal or you need the Thunder along with Valhalla, and from there you can get your searches going and really do anything. And to do any of those, you don't need to special summon. Afterwards, you can run into problems because your monsters are being special summoned during your standby phase, then you can't activate this. But normally if you're special summoning some Weather Painters already, then you're already in a good position. This is more for either recovery or, like I said, just starting off first turn, making sure you get the combo pieces that you need. The rest of the Weather Painters, we've got the Sunny. I mostly play him at 3 just because he's got 1600 attack, which is higher than a lot of the other Weather Painters. His effect is if it's in the graveyard, you could send a continuous spell trap you control to the graveyard to special summon in defense position, and if you do, place 1 Weather Painter spell trap from your hand into your spell trap zone. This can be decent for summoning, and this can be decent fodder for discarding with Herald of Greenlight, but it requires a bit of setup. You need to have a Weather Painter that you don't already have on the field in your hand, as well as a spell trap that you want to get rid of. Like I said, though, we've got some fodder for that, so this can be useful, especially if you want to go into like link summons, or just get more monsters on the field. Cloudy is if another face-up, the Weather Painter card you control is sent to the graveyard while you control this card. You can target up to 2 Weather Painter spell traps in your graveyard and place them in your spell trap zone. This can be some good recovery if you're worried about like Twin Twisters and stuff like that, but it has even less attack than the other ones, and it requires both a little bit of graveyard setup and hoping that they're not playing Cosmic Cyclone, which is very popular these days. I'd rather protect things with our 1 level 5 monster. If it's normal summoned, you can place a Weather Painter from your hand, deck, or graveyard into your spell trap zone face up, which can be pretty nice if you can normal summon it. If you get like 2 monsters on the field, it's not that difficult, especially with Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. Can help you fill out your spell trap zone if you don't already have like all 4 spell traps on the field. Alternatively, you can always just special summon it with Valhalla, which is what often happens. Just because its second effect, which is Weather Painter spell traps you control, cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and your opponent cannot target them with card effects. So once you get this on the field, all of your spell traps are safe from destruction. Usually what I try to do is turbo this out. You'll take some damage in the first couple turns getting your searches and tagging out, but if you could survive and end up with all 4 of your Weather Painter, plus this and another Weather Painter, you're usually pretty set. Our final Weather Painter is just the Rainy Lazuli. If this card is special summoned, you can place 1 Weather Painter spell trap from your hand into your spell trap zone. Really not all that useful unless you're playing the trap and you don't already have it set for whatever reason, but it can be decent because it triggers every time it special summons. I'm mostly just playing these 3, just so I have more Weather Painters that I can activate the Snowy Weather pattern if I need, just more attackers. Honestly, though, if I was going again, probably 2 Sleets and 1 of these, or maybe even 3 Sleets now that I'm thinking about it. Either way, our last remaining card, Herald of Greenlight, very simple. During either player's turn, if your opponent activates a spell, send this card and another fairy-type monster from your hand to the graveyard to negate the activation and destroy it. This is a really good hand trap, especially because it stops things like Twin Twister and MST, or even the Galaxy Cyclone, the Cosmic Cyclone, whatever they're going to be using to take care of your spell traps if you don't yet have Lampra. You can send it to the graveyard. We've got Call the Haunted. This guy can summon himself out of the graveyard, so there's a little bit of synergy there. And of course, if you've got extra Hecatrice, maybe you've already used it, or you don't need the Valhalla, you've got a lot of discard fodder, and a lot of people aren't expecting it. You can really disrupt your opponent that way. I went with the green one that does spells, just because those are most likely to destroy your spell traps. But there's also an Herald of Orange Light that protects you against monster effects, and Purple Light that protects you against traps. And I keep 3 copies of these in the side deck. You'll want to switch this out after you know what you're playing. Spells I went with because I'm doing singles, but definitely in matches maybe play like 1 of each to start with, and then side in whatever you're most worried about. All that's left then is Kokimiru of Ice. During each of your end phases, destroy this card unless you reveal an Iron Core, or a continuous spell card in your hand, and you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to destroy 1 special summoned monster on the field. This is just some good removal if for whatever reason they can't be banished or returned to the hand. It's also got 1900 attack, so it's a pretty good beat stick. It lets you go into your rank 4s some more. And of course we're playing a lot of continuous spells, so getting this maintenance cost isn't all that difficult. And then I also got a Messenger of Peace, which can be another good sort of stall card if you want to go on the more defensive route with like Drowning Mirror Force. You can put this there. Monsters with 1500 or more attack cannot declare an attack. You've got a lot with lower attack. I think that's why I have these in here, because originally I was playing with the Messenger of Pieces in here. All that leaves is the side deck, which is entirely just a toolbox. The only thing I'd really say for sure to play is at least 1 copy of their boss monster, Arceal. It's 3 Weather Painter monsters, which is pretty difficult to get, but its effect can be pretty devastating at times. When your opponent would special summon a monster, you can send this Link Summon card to the graveyard to negate the special summon and destroy that monster. So it can negate summons, but of course it gets rid of itself. It won't be coming back if it's tributed. And probably more importantly, effect monsters this card points to gain this effect. When a card or effect is activated, quick effect, banish that card and negate the activation. So just like the weather patterns point up, this points down, and whatever monster you have there gets the effect to negate monsters, spells, and traps by banishing themselves. A lot of people try to turbo this out because it is really powerful, but I find usually it's better to just have 4 weather painters on the field, just attacking a whole bunch and activating effects. It's not really worth it to get rid of 3 of them so that you get 1 all-purpose negation. But if you're already winning, if you've got 5 cards and you just want to seal the deal to make sure your opponent's not going to Dark Hole Raigeki you and come back, then this can be something to make just sort of like as a last, like, I've got you, just go ahead and surrender. So there you go, Weather Painter Control. A fairly simple deck that's kind of difficult to explain, but pretty fun. They're kind of like Ghost Tricks. They're a slow, stally control deck, which is fun to play. Next week, I'll be looking at a Patreon request for something a little weird, something a little older. Should be interesting. Until then, good luck and have fun.